Tom Campbell here. If you find something of significant value in our videos, please consider supporting their production through our Patreon account or through a one-time donation. The links are in the description below. Thank you and enjoy the video.
Our next question, Tom, suppose there are many IUOCs out there. I would presume that there's a large number of IUOCs at the big kids level, such as Tom's IUOC. Is there something similar to a Facebook group of big kids out there that congregate and discuss issues happening in the VRs? Why it appears that the IUOCs with high quality of consciousness are so scattered and scarce in our PMR. There were in the past Jesus in the West, Buddha in the East, and now there's a Tom in the USA. Can the LCS put up an ad and try to recruit more big kids who can be our mentors and come and play with us? I love her sense of humor.
Yeah, well, it's doing the best it can. It does seem to get who it needs to get by. So we're doing all right. But you know, the people who grow up, what they do if they really grow up is come back. You know, how can I help? Not how can I get out of here, but how can I help? You know, if it's how can I get out of here, then that's not too grown up. They haven't made it yet. So people do come back and help, but they don't all necessarily end up in a position of, you know, where a lot of people know that they exist. You know, they could just be good examples. They could be doing their work without much exposure. So, and there's probably a lot of those around, you know, people who are low entropy, who are just kind and nice and you know, help other people as they can. And there's probably a lot of those, but they're not people that you read stories about or who necessarily write books or, or do anything. They just come and are a higher quality of consciousness. So there's probably thousands, you know, tens of thousands of or maybe more people who are very high quality, who just live here among us and, you know, leave the world a little better place for their having been here. So
are there meetups that discuss what the next strategy is? Or
if there is, I haven't been invited. No meetups. Now I have been sometimes engaged in talks with those who are non-physical, like the big G's, about a few things, but mostly not. It's mostly not that kind of thing where the big boys go meet on Facebook someplace and discuss strategies for saving the world. No, it isn't that way at all. You know, you're here and you have to work within, you know, the tools you have being here. So if you were outside of here, then you really wouldn't be real. You kind of have to be one of the people here in order to interact here. You can't do it from a higher level of big kids. You know, you really have to be a member in order to interact here. So now, matter of fact, I found the whole system to be like that. If it's not something you need to know about, if it's not on your path to growing up or on your path to be a part of that solution of that thing, then generally you don't get told about it. There's very little gossiping going on in the larger system. You know just about what it is you need to know about, and generally nothing more. And that's because you don't want people to lead with their intellects, to game the system, to try to figure out, you know, how to manipulate it to be the way they want it. That's not, it has to come out of the heart. You have to do things because that's the way you are, not because that's what your intellect says. So a bunch of people strategizing on how they're going to manipulate the people, you know, to make the people, you know, more kind, it doesn't really work like that, because now you have people, working a manipulation on others to try to get them to do something they want. That's just doing the same thing that we're trying to avoid while we're here. While we're here, we just accept people as they are. We grow ourselves up, and other people have to grow themselves up. So it doesn't work like that.
It's more example.
Yeah, well, it's example. Sometimes it's leadership, but it has to be organic. It has to be homegrown. It has to come from here. It has to be real. It has to be from the being level. It's not a strategy of how to manipulate the people into evolving more efficiently, because then it's, I don't know, it's not actually evolution. Now the system has gone and is meddling with the evolution of the system. And I suspect that in the end, that's not a good thing. You kind of have to let it grow in its own way. It has to be organic. It can't be something that the system is planning. Now the system can help in places where there is enough uncertainty to mask the fact that it's helped at all. And it does that. All the synchronicities, all the interesting paranormal things that people experience that help, put them on a path for being a seeker, all those things. It can help with doing a lot of things like that and give us a lot of wake-up calls. So it stirs the pot that way, but we have to take the initiative to do it. And that's the same way. When people come here to help, they have to live it, grow to it, and own it out of their own free will, not because they were placed in a position to make decisions that cause to go this way or that way. So it's not like a company. Where's the boss? It's like we're all running around out here. We need a boss to tell us what to do. You kids, stop that. Don't run with scissors. That sort of things. Stop ripping each other off. It's just not real if you don't come to it on your own, in your own way. If you don't grow to it organically, then it's not a real thing. Now you're doing the exact same thing that we say you need to stop doing, which is to feel that you know more than other people and you're going to manipulate them to be more the way you think they should be. That generally doesn't work. You'll end up with if that's the way it works, then you're going to end up with if that's the way it works within some religious organization, then you're going to end up with a whole bunch of priests who are all intellectual, but none of them really walk the walk. They all know the story and they can all sound very holy and whatever, but they don't really have the integrity that goes with the position, because they didn't earn it. They didn't grow into it. They got it, they got there, and now they're overseeing and manipulating others. And that sort of thing always ends up going bad after a while. So the system just doesn't like to interfere. It lets us do what we do. So anybody here that seems to be a leader in spiritual matters, it's because they may have come here with a mission, but they still have to grow up to it and figure it out on their own. It's just like writing my big toe. Nobody dictated my big toe to me, and I just wrote it down, in a trance state or something. I had to figure it all out. I got some nudges, I got some hints here and there, some synchronicities perhaps, but in the end, I had to be the one that went, aha, and put the pieces together. Because if I'd just been told to me, then it wouldn't be mine and I wouldn't own it. If I didn't own it, I couldn't answer all these questions. It just wouldn't work out. And then I'd be pretending that I owned it. And then I'd be in the point of, trying to convince others that I did. And the whole thing turns fake after a while. And then it starts to go egotistical, and then it goes negative. And then it dies under its own weight. So it doesn't go there. No meetings, no staff meetings about the coordination on what we're going to do next. If there's any coordination, it's all done at a higher level.
Sure.
And we just get nudges because we have to own everything we do. Every choice that anybody makes they have to be responsible for that choice. It has to be their choice, not because they were told to do something or even nudged to do something.
It's where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah, that's it.
It's
Right
here.
here, right here.
Instant feedback, folks.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll move on to the next question. Thanks for that. This is from Dependent. You talked a lot about healing, and that sometimes it is not required for a certain individual because you prevent them from having a certain experience, like having a disease, that is something on their path. Knowing that, assuming I myself have an illness, like, say, an addiction, and it seems like this is the way I should be learning at this point in my existence, I tried getting rid of it, and by now I suspect that there might be a deeper meaning behind it. I also tried to collect a lot of data using the 5-question methods from the Gateway program, and the data seems to be pointing towards delving deeper into the addiction. This might actually lead to dramatic consequences, loss of relationship, or even death. How would you deal with that? And how can I know that this is really coming from a deeper level and it's not just an excuse to keep going on with the addiction? Now, I know you don't give advice out of that is for professionals to give out, but from a consciousness aspect, how would you address
Well,
this question?
that's the only way I would address the question, of course.
Yeah.
If the data you are receiving, by whatever method you might receive it, or however that process goes, it doesn't matter. You are responsible for making your own choices. You get decisions, you get data that pushes you toward a dysfunctional choice, then just don't do it. Don't pay attention to that data. You know, you have to be skeptical of everything. Sometimes, you know, you might be given misinformation just to see if you can figure it out, or just that you will use your own free will. You know, if you are too dependent on getting information from, or getting, what should I say, making your choices based on what you get. There's some people that get so far down that alley that they can't make a choice without consulting the oracle, you know, without asking, you know, however they do that, you know, whether it's, you know, the I Ching, or, you know, swinging a pendulum, or just going into a meditation state. They have to get permission, it seems, for everything they do. Well, at that point, the system may just give you some bad information just to force you to get out of that mode of letting something else make your free will choices. You have to make them. If the choices are to go ahead and go deeper into addiction, I would immediately be, I would immediately wonder where that's coming from. Doesn't sound like the system that I know and that I've worked with for years. It's not going to say things like that. It's not going to encourage you to explore that path. That's not good. Like you say, there's a lot of downsides to that. It doesn't lead into a good place. And the idea that, well, before you can turn around, you have to hit the dark night of your soul. You know, you have to hit bottom first before you can turn around. Well, nonsense. You don't have to hit bottom first. You can turn around anytime you're ready to turn around. You don't have to go through depression and you know, hit bottom. So I'd look at what you're getting. If it's not really to your benefit, just stop doing it. Stop paying any attention to it. Who knows where it's coming from? It could come from all sorts of places. Every time you get the message that is paranormal or that's not from normal means, don't jump to the conclusion that it's somebody that knows more than you do, or somebody smarter than you, or somebody more qualified or more advanced or higher quality than you are. It's not necessarily that way. So wherever it's coming from, it sounds like it's something to be ignored, not something to be followed. So I would say, no, the addiction is not going to be helpful, whatever your addiction is. It's not going to be helpful to the rest of your life. It's not going to be helpful to your growing up. So if addiction is a problem, and almost all addictions are a problem, even if they're even if they're entirely legal, like prescription drugs or to sugar or to nicotine or caffeine there's lots of things you can get addicted to. You can get addicted to wheat, I understand. So, if it's an addiction, then it's a problem because addictions start to reduce your decision space. That addiction starts to, you start making choices based on that addiction. And that's not good. So I would be very skeptical if I were you about that data, and don't feel like just because it's data that comes from the great beyond that it has to be good. Data from the great beyond can be terrible data. You have to be skeptical, and you have to make what you think is the right choice. And going deeper into an addiction does not sound to me like a right choice, unless there's some very, very unusual circumstances about that I can't imagine. Then that's a poor choice. And it's certainly not on your road to success. But it sounds like your understanding is pretty good and your awareness is pretty good. So let go of the bad advice and go off, make your own choices, and do the thing that you think is best for you and for others and for your relationships. Your choice, your free will. Okay.
All right. Well, let's go on to a couple of unusual things coming up. We have some questions that relate to some of the things in the book. Now, this is coming from Renaud. This is coming from Renaldefin. Okay. On improving predictive algorithms. He is referring, or she, to book 3 of MBT, where the discussion is the time base for the PMR simulation. It includes a table. Now this
is on page 670 of the all-in-one.
Of the all-in-one, okay.
But all the other books, if they're separate books, the page numbers start at 1 again in each book, so they're not the same. You'll just have to figure that out. It's in, it's book 3, section 5, and the chapter numbers will be different too. So you'll just have to go to
text box 5.1.
Well, let me go back to the name of the chapter, of course, will be the same. And the name of the chapter is Probable Futures, Real Time, Our System, State Vectors, and History. That's a long title, but that's the title. So when you pick that title up, then it's the second page. Get to that chapter. Model of reality and time, probable reality surfaces, the simulated probable future, real time, our system, state vectors, and history. That's the chapter title. Then just turn the page. The second page in at the bottom is where you'll find it.
All right. So he has in quotes, predictive algorithms and databases are uplifted and improved. How are the predictive algorithms improved exactly? Does this happen through something other than the fundamental process, i.e. evolution, acting directly on the algorithms themselves? Or are these units of consciousness responsible for tuning these algorithms?
Okay. No, the consciousnesses are not responsible for tuning these algorithms. Okay, it's not something for them to do. And yes, they are evolving, but you can have, evolution refers to a system. Systems evolve, and you can have subsystems that are evolving within systems and subsystems within subsystems. Evolution, when you talk about evolution or say the word, there's implied a system that you're talking about. So evolution on this earth, then it's all the living things on the earth. It's the system, the earth system. So there is the whole system, which is the larger conscious system, is evolving. And then there is the system that is called, the big computer, or sometimes our virtual reality rendering engine. It's that part of the larger conscious system that is configured as a computer to serve up the virtual reality game that is our virtual reality, what we see as the physical universe. So that's a subset of the larger conscious system, this computer. And in my book, I call it the big computer. And Ted had a habit of calling it the reality something rendering engine. I can't remember exactly, but anyway, it's the rendering code for our particular virtual reality. Okay, now that subsystem, the big computer, our VR's rendering engine, that is what is evolving these predictions. So you can say that's where the evolution is taking place. That's where we look at those predictions, and if the predictions could be made better, then they are made better. Sometimes when you make predictions, you tend to have this, if present trends continue, then, and you make your prediction. But it's based on history, on what you know, on all the actions and choices that have come up to that time. But as you know, sometimes present trends don't continue. Sometimes people just change and they do things differently. They grow up and they stop doing things in certain ways. In which case, if you say, well, okay, this is what I predict, and it doesn't happen. Well, maybe that was just a one-off. So then you try, the next time you make a prediction, and that with that same person, it doesn't happen again. Well, now it's time to go in and see if you don't need to change the algorithms that are making those predictions, because something's changed there. Present trends are not continuing. So we need to build some new trends. And that's something then that the system would work with. You see, so it's the system I'm saying now is the rendering engine system. Remember, this is all done inside consciousness. It's the larger consciousness system. The larger conscious system is conscious. It's not just a big machine. It is the conscious system, but it's also conscious. It's aware. It's intelligent. And that portion of it that is the rendering engine, that may have some intelligence, some awareness as well. So it has ways to keep what it's doing, updated, so it doesn't get behind. So part of its processing is to remain updated, changing the way it does things to fit the way things are now, as opposed to the way things used to be. So that's, yes, it is evolving. Everything evolves. Everything that changes, if it has a purpose, everything evolves. So, yes, it's just changed because there's a part of the system that tries to keep it effective and efficient.
Well, I think you've answered this somewhat. As
Mm-hmm.
they improve, does this mean that the algorithms get progressively more efficient, what you just said, and accurate at predicting future state vectors?
Well,
If
yes,
so,
just for now, though, because then people can change again. So they may be
mhm.
more effective than they were, but after a while, they may become less effective again because more changes are made. So yes, it is made to make it more efficient and effective, but that's, people have free will. That keeps changing. So just because it makes it more effective doesn't mean it's someday going to get to the point that it's perfect. You can never have a perfect prognosticator in a system that's run on free will. It's constantly going to be changing. If it didn't have any intelligence that was updating itself as things changed, eventually it'd be working on bad data and wouldn't be getting many predictions right. And then it would have a lot more computing to do. So It's just trying to keep the efficiency and the accuracy at a good level, not make it perfect. It can't be made perfect.
Tom Campbell here. I and MBT Events hope you liked this video. We now have well over 1,000 hours of free video on this user-friendly, ad-free YouTube channel. Though these videos are free to our viewers, they represent many thousands of hours in production and editing, and many thousands of dollars invested in video and audio equipment, along with the required computers and software to store and process the raw video into finished products. So far, all of this content has been funded directly out of our own pockets. Be assured, we will always continue to do what we can. It's our life, our purpose, a labor of love that we will continue to pursue as best we can. However, those pockets are not as deep as they used to be. Thus, we are now seeking to augment our resources with support from our viewers. If you find something of significant value in our videos, please consider supporting their production through our Patreon account or through a one-time donation. The links are in the description below. Thank you.